All right, Julian, welcome back to episode number 3. So, this episode, we're thinking of talking about the movie that everyone is talking about, Oppenheimer, and you've seen it today. Is that right?
Absolutely. Seen it today, this morning. Not easy to get tickets. Today is a Sunday, 10 a.m. Cinema was absolutely crowded. Every seat was taken.
Where did you see it?
In London, View, Stratford.
Okay. Did you see it in IMAX or?
No, just normal cinema. And like every single seat, I've never in my life did I go to the cinema at 10 a.m. on a Sunday, and it was taken. Everything else is fully booked. The hype is real.
Yeah.
Feels like everybody's going to see that movie. Have you seen it?
Yes, it's a fantastic movie, and I saw it last weekend, last Saturday. I absolutely love the movie, but because it's been a week for me, I'll let you, and you're like fresh off the movie. So maybe do you want to give your thoughts, what you thought about the movie? I have a lot of thoughts, but I'll let you go first.
Oh, what I think about the movie?
Yes.
Wow, that is a very open question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Christopher Nolan movie. Let's just do like a review, like your thoughts about the movie.
To be honest, like before watching it, I watched the trailer once, like ages ago, like when I was in the cinema for another movie, and there was a trailer for Oppenheimer, and I thought it was going to be more an action movie. Also given, Christopher Nolan, I think his last movie was Tenet, or
yeah.
one of his last, and it was like pure action. Well, he apparently referred to Oppenheimer
Exactly.
already.
I saw it in the interview, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought it was going to be much more action, much more about the war, much more about how the U.S. develops this bomb in order to, end the war in the... Well, it was, but, it was much less about the actual, dropping the bomb, the actual war in the Pacific, the actual war against the Nazis, the Cold War with the Russians. It was much more about, the process of getting there. How did the people who were actually developing this feel? What was that process? What are the moral dilemmas they were facing? And then a huge part of the movie was actually something that I was completely oblivious to, which was, his like him actually being accused afterwards of not being a hero but being a traitor. But maybe let's break it down step by step.
So for me, firstly, it's a Christopher Nolan movie. He has it. Not to do. Everyone knows this. He has a track record of delivering epics after epics, right? So this was another. For me, it was absolutely amazing. Just the cinematography, the acting. We have to talk about Cillian Murphy, who I absolutely love. I don't know if you've seen Peaky Blinders. That was the first time I was introduced
I haven't seen
to him. Even though he's in other Christopher Nolan movies as well. Though the Dark Knight series as well. He plays Scarecrow in one of the movies. So Cillian Murphy, absolutely amazing. Do you have any thoughts about his eyes? I thought his presence on screen was absolutely fantastic. And there's so many stills where he's just sitting and they zoom in and you can see his visual look. It was incredible. That part was incredible. And then he used Christopher Nolan used I don't know if you've seen Memento, but there was the differentiation between two different timelines, the black and white and the and the part in color in real life, and that differentiation was pretty incredible again. So I thought those two parts were incredible, and so many amazing actors who played even tiny roles, like Robert Downey Jr. He played a quite critical part.
You could hardly recognize him. That's 30 years older than in most of his roles.
Did you know who played Harry Truman?
No, who's that?
Gary Oldman, who was from I don't know if you've seen the Dark Knight trilogy, but he played the commissioner in the movie.
Gary Oldman is him. Commissioner Gordon.
Exactly, Commissioner Gordon. He's done amazing movies. Emily Blunt as well. Her acting was incredible.
All right, perfect. The acting incredible. So, but let's think about the big themes in the movie. And I guess the first big theme is these physicists developing the atomic bomb, and then I think as they get closer and closer towards actually getting there and developing it, I think the moral dilemma starts starts showing up. I think in the beginning when they started it was more like, okay, we need to develop this against Nazi Germany, but then in 1945, once that was defeated, a lot of them, including Oppenheimer, were thinking, do we still need that bomb, and are we actually doing any good by developing this? Yeah, curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that was very well handled. I thought the whole part around how and why the bomb was developed, like what was the historical background there, and the fact that Nazi Germany was developing a bomb. And we should talk about all the physicists who were involved. So Heisenberg
Mm-hmm.
was on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and actually, it was Einstein who wrote a letter at the time. That's what they show in the movie. That he wrote a letter to the Allies, saying that Nazi Germany is in fact developing a nuclear weapon. And so, if you don't do it, then if they have the bomb before you, so that was the whole driver of developing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, in my mind, there was no option, right? But
That's clear in the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
When they started in 1941, 1942. Fast forward 3 years later, there is no more Nazi Germany. Germany is defeated in 1945. What's your views there?
you mean going forward now?
Not just now. I mean, 1945. The
Yes.
bomb wasn't there yet, and Nazi
Yes.
Germany was defeated. And I think a lot of people were thinking, do we still need to continue this program, or is it gonna result
Yeah.
in an arms race with the Soviet Union?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point. And I think the whole dilemma around using it, that was a bigger part of the story. I mean, obviously, the movie focuses on Oppenheimer,
Mhm.
right? And his part in developing the bomb. But the real story, not the real, but a very important part of the story is the role that Harry Truman played
Mhm.
as the person who actually authorized it.
Mhm.
Right now, there are many arguments here on whether it should or should not have been used. It's a very sensitive debate. I mean, from my perspective, I can give both sides of the argument, right?
Mhm.
One side of the argument, which was for using it, was to put an immediate end to the war and also give a signal to Russia, the Soviet Union at the time, because there were some, hostilities which obviously continue till today, but there was some inherent mistrust. So that was the one reason. The other reason, which people flag, the contra or the against version, is the fact that Japan was already defeated and they were already in the brink of surrendering. So those are the two, kind of like chains of thought there. And it's a very sensitive one. I don't quite know. What's your view on this?
Yeah, I mean, quite obviously, I think at the time, the reason why American officials decided to drop those two bombs is, they've seen, 6 years of World War between 1939 and 1945. They've seen tens of millions of people die,
Yes.
tens of millions of people suffering. And they thought at the time, with the intelligence they had, that in order to conquer Japan, they would have to go island by island.
Yes.
Which would lead to the loss of lives of many more Japanese and American soldiers and civilians. And at the same time, they thought that the solution to this, or the way forward, was dropping those two bombs in order to force Japan to surrender, and at great cost to human life, not only human life actually. And they decided to go forward with that. And in fact, the war was over just days after that. Very high cost, but
Yeah.
this is I think what they saw at the time. 6 years of World War, which they thought could finally come to an end by dropping these bombs. So
Yeah.
very controversial.
Yes.
Have you been to Japan? Have you been to?
No, I've not been to Japan, but I know. So you've been to.
I've been to
Hiroshima.
Hiroshima actually.
Okay, so very curious to see your views around, having been in the city, just like outline for people who have not been there, like, is it actually populated firstly? Does it still have the remnants of the bomb? What do people think about it now? Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So today the city is fully built back up. If you wouldn't know that Hiroshima was target of an atomic bomb today, you probably would not see this unless you go to the historic sites. The thing is, I mean, the Japanese did a fantastic job of building the atomic bomb museum there, which really shows you in all cruel detail of what actually happened on the days after the nuclear fallout, what people had to suffer from, which is really horrific. And they did a really great job of displaying this in a very humane manner. Interestingly, you look at statistics. So when you ask the Japanese,
Yeah.
can this be forgiven? You know, dropping the atomic bomb on specifically Hiroshima. You're gonna find it's very interesting. You're gonna find something around 40% say this can never be forgiven. 40% say this is forgiven, and then there's the 20%
Yeah.
who are somewhere in between. And the interesting bit is that if you ask citizens of Hiroshima,
Yeah.
it's actually slightly more in favor of this is forgiven. It's more than
Wow.
more than 50%. So more people than on the other side say this is forgiven.
And
Yeah.
what are the reasons for it, do you think? That they.
Well, so here's the thing, and you asked the Japanese people another question, which is around the alliance to the U.S. and the
Mhm.
military alliance. Then I think you asked in the 70s if Japanese consider an alliance with the U.S. as a positive thing. I think most people said yes, so 65-70%. You ask the same question today, it's 90% plus.
Of course.
And it's actually such a big topic with the potential threat from China that Japan was debating considering some of the nuclear principles, one of which
Yeah.
was not having allied, so American nukes stationed on Japanese ground, which could be used to deter North Korea, to deter China. They've reopened this discussion. So actually this proximity to the US is very much there, and 90% plus of people today, which is far higher than in the past, support that. And I think this is where it comes from. And I think also today we're probably it's just a different generation. These events are a long time ago.
Yeah.
As you said, it's very difficult to say, yes, this was the right decision. No, this was the wrong decision. And hence, I think a lot of people just want to move on and understand that now probably our responsibility is to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a very good takeaway, and I mean, like you mentioned, actually, one of the biggest reasons why, now that I think about it, why the Japanese people may actually support it is, in fact, as he said, a part of part of the reasoning of the surrender was that the U.S. would support militarily Japan going forward, and they don't have to build their own army. So it's a quasi protection that they have with their neighbors, which is a part of the whole narrative there. So that might be a part of the reason. And I mean, look, I think Japan is I think it's the third largest economy now.
Isn't that Germany?
I thought, okay.
It's US, China, Germany.
US, China, Germany. So, and then it's Japan?
I think so, something like this.
Because I know India has 5. So
India has 5.
yeah,
okay,
so I think it has to be, yeah. So the point, okay, we have to fact check this. This will be very embarrassing. Point being that the country has come such a long way from that, and it has had incredible economic growth. I think I can see why people would be more. It's such a sensitive topic, and
not supportive, but say it can be forgiven.
Yes, indeed. But so I think overall, I love the movie. I can keep talking about Cillian Murphy for a while, but the acting, the storyline, and how they covered the aftermath was.
So should we talk about the aftermath a little bit? And do you think maybe Oppenheimer was a little bit ahead of his time? That once the bomb was developed, he was really against the development of the next step, the H bomb, or the super, as they call it. Do you think he was maybe ahead of his time, and what's your view there?
It's such a good question, and I feel like we're sort of in the same situation as why was it developed in the first place. The reasoning why you need to continue, in my mind, developing it further is for the same reasons, because the other side is developing it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a never-ending debate, really, and again, I think there are two chains of thought here, right? Two trains of thought. That one is because of the development of these weapons. Some people say that wars are less likely now, major large-scale wars, because of the threat of mutually assured destruction, right? And that was the whole theme that was prevalent during the Cold War. While the other side says there's possibilities of accidents which can be calamitous and ultimately just devastating for the whole world, right? And like the Cuban Missile Crisis was a situation which was very close to a complete collapse, really, between the USSR and the US. So I mean, I think it's, for me, the debate is really the same. The reasons why the US had to build it in the first place is the reason why they would have to continue with the progression of the technology. Again, I think there are benefits to that technology, as we can see now. You know, it's the nuclear fission and fusion is used as a source of energy potentially, yeah, from a purely defense perspective, I can see the rationale why. But again, the regulatory framework, etc., has to be there to ensure that there's not unlimited proliferation across the world. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, Heidi? But again, we should actually preface this by saying we're not experts in
H bombs.
Yes, exactly.
By the way, do you know how the atomic bomb works?
I think at the very high level, it's the whole part was around the splitting of the nucleus of an atom.
Exactly.
And yeah, so I think uranium was.
It's very interesting. I mean, the point was, you know, what scientists for a long time, even before the atomic bomb, so we didn't know there was protons and neutrons, and what people were doing is they were bombarding atoms or the core of the atoms with protons.
Yeah.
And what happened is then the core of the atom is also positively charged and the proton is positively charged. So it is very hard to actually hit it because they are opposing each other. But it was possible, but there was no chain reactions, but it was seen as possible to actually split the core of an atom. And then only with the discovery of the neutron was actually seen that, hey, what happens if we find a material, an atom, that if you shoot a neutron on it, which is going to be much easier than a proton because you don't have that charge which, you know, pushes each other away. But if we find an atom where we bombard it with a neutron and it starts a reaction where that core splits and at the same time it emits more than one neutron, so say 2 neutrons. These neutrons then bombard the next cores of the next atoms. And it's almost like a pandemic. So if one atom that gets split sends out more than one neutron, then, you know, this is a chain reaction which goes bigger and bigger and bigger. And interestingly, if I don't know if you remember the scene where that one guy jumped out of his hairdresser chair. This is when he realized that someone in Germany had actually found a way to split uranium atoms, which would send out 2 neutrons, which essentially meant that a chain reaction could be started. And this is the whole point.
Wow, that was pretty. And I mean, while you're talking, it's reminding me of that one scene in the movie. Again, no spoilers, but the part where Matt Damon, who's the head of the army responsible for this part of the program, asked Oppenheimer or actually Oppenheimer said there is a possibility that we may not be able to control this. And then Matt Damon asks, what is the probability of that? Oppenheimer said, close to 0. And he goes, close to 0. I would rather it be 0, because it just shows the severity of this development, right? They didn't actually know that this could potentially be a chain reaction that does not stop.
Exactly. Doesn't stop outside the uranium.
Yes. And I mean, should we talk about that scene actually? It wasn't the essence of the movie, but that scene, it had to be put in, right? Of the test of the bomb. I thought it was incredible, that scene.
Which scene is that? Oh, when he says I wish it was.
When it actually, you know, when they do the test in
of the
Los Alamos, exactly.
Trinity.
That was such an incredible scene because they actually shot it from the perspective of Oppenheimer, right? So that entire scene, and again, we should talk about how this movie is shot without any CGI. So so that was because Christopher Nolan.
So they had an actual explosion.
I don't know. I'm not the expert in how they did it, but because Christopher Nolan is against CGI.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So so that was pretty interesting how it was shot, and that was, you know, the tension and the music.
Because it was hours before the Potsdam conference where Stalin.
I didn't know the background to this. Because
so the Potsdam conference where they would negotiate the peace and how to divvy up Germany between so Stalin. Then I guess Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Or was it Truman already?
No, I think that's a good point actually.
Churchill, and so the
and
three
French,
big
yes.
leaders: Churchill,
Yeah.
Stalin, I think Roosevelt.
Yeah.
I think Truman came after.
Yes. You're
Um,
right. Yeah.
It was hours before that, and the
Wow.
US did want to have that tested. And they spoke about that in the movie, and it was just scheduled for something like 4 a.m., but there was the storm, and they did it 5:30 a.m., and then they could report the results straight to Germany. And
Wow.
the US would go into those negotiations knowing that they had successfully tested
Yeah.
the A-bomb.
So this kind of lends further credence to the fact that it was also used as a signal to the Soviet,
Definitely.
which is very
They
interesting.
could say we just tested the most
nuclear weapon,
powerful.
weapon on Earth. Yeah, so I think overall, such an incredibly covered, sensitive topic, but the life of Oppenheimer was covered so well. I personally love the whole historical aspect of how they had Einstein and Heisenberg, and this entire background was just incredible. So for me, great movie. Some people say it was a bit long. For me, it wasn't.
Okay.
I don't know what you think. It's 3 hours long.
So it's 3 hours, yeah. I think it's definitely long. I think if you sit for 3 hours in the cinema, that's a long time. I wouldn't want it to be any longer. But at the same time, it does not get boring. I mean, the story is very captivating. So I didn't mind. And actually, in fact, it was one of these movies where afterwards I did want to do more research on, who was that guy Oppenheimer? What happened to him after? How does it actually, how many people were there in Los Alamos to develop the bomb? How does the bomb actually work?
Yeah.
Why do they have this fancy structure of is that just a movie where they put these pieces almost around the core, and why would they put the marbles in the glass?
Yeah.
So I did research on all of that. So I thought it's okay. I think I definitely would not want it longer, but I can see why they needed so much time in order to tell the whole story of Oppenheimer.
Incredible. So overall, highly recommend is what I would say. I think it was an epic movie, so I would really say.
Excellent. And maybe speaking about something, so there is currently a giant hype around this, on Oppenheimer. I mean, you go on a Sunday, 10 a.m., the cinema's full. I think actually cinemas had one of their, if not the busiest weekend.
Yes, with Barbie.
With Barbie and Oppenheimer, or Barbenheimer. And there's the trend of, maybe you want to be Barbenheimer, watching both movies at the same time.
Yes, exactly. I haven't seen Barbie, but I think you're right that this is a separate topic, but I think we should
Why do you think that is? Why do you think this movie, together with Barbie, I guess, created such a hype where everybody wants to see it?
Exactly. I think, I don't know who the director of Barbie is, but I think they've also done some incredible movies in the past. Christopher Nolan just comes with an incredible amount of hype, right? So both of these movies, the star cast of Barbie, I mean Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie, of course, and the star cast of this, the directors on both sides, the movie studios on both sides, and it's been a long while, right, since we've had such epic movies come at the same time, almost concurrently, and it's sort of in the background of this huge change in customer preference of how they consume movies and cinema now, right? So we've moved the whole streaming debate, and how COVID has just changed preferences of people.
Do you think that's true?
The fact that people's preferences have changed.
Do you think people prefer to watch Netflix rather than go to the cinema?
Go cinema. I think, unfortunately, this is the truth, right? I mean, there's a certain amount of convenience associated with streaming. And I think the facts are just clear that especially the combination of streaming and COVID was almost an irreversible scenario for the cinemas. And I mean, you can see from 2019 to now, the situation for cinema viewership, the numbers starts to show that it's gone down quite a bit. However, I mean, if you were to ask me, the cinema experience still remains the best way to watch a movie. Imagine watching a movie like Oppenheimer on streaming, or a movie like Interstellar, or Dune, for example. That was the other one that came out in recent years. These kind of movies, the experience is just completely different in the cinema.
I watched Dune on the airplane. It was awful.
Exactly.
Yeah, but is it true? Because it's very interesting actually when as you say, COVID, cinemas had to shut down, and potentially even more important, the studios stopped or reduced their activity in creating new movies, because nobody knew when can we, go
Yes.
back online? When will all of these lockdowns stop? So you just don't want to invest hundreds of millions into the next blockbuster. You want to slow that down a little bit while you have that uncertainty, right? And which meant that even coming out of COVID, the pipeline of movies we had wasn't as strong as the pipeline, maybe in 2019, right? And so I find it very interesting that actually when you look at the big blockbuster movies, so like
Yeah.
an Oppenheimer, a Barbie, a Top Gun,
Yes.
the top Marvel movies, an Avenger,
Yes.
then you look at the the Blue People, Avatar 2,
The blue people.
which I think was
Then you're talking about the Smurfs for a second. Okay.
yeah, which was in some countries actually the highest grossing movie ever. For example,
Avatar.
Germany. Avatar 2. The
Wow.
only country where it wasn't successful, or one of the countries, was UK for some reason.
Okay.
But so if you look at these top movies, they're actually doing as well, or some better, some worse, compared to
Yeah.
the top movies before COVID.
Yeah.
So actually, once you have a good movie, people come and people watch, like you see right now.
Yeah.
But what we do see is, I think the film slate is not as strong as before.
Yeah.
You don't have the quantity, and so that's why I'm not sure if it's really, is it the preference that changed, or
Yeah. But I think it's fair to say that, like even in terms of, so you're mentioning how these big studios, they didn't have a big lineup, which is completely true. But in 2021, for example, when we were in the middle of the pandemic, all the major studios, they just released all the movies straight to streaming, right? I mean, historically they've
they
had
lost
this.
money, right? That's the thing. Like you can make. I think
Some movies made a lot of money. I don't know which one it was, but I was seeing some stats that one of the major Warner brother movies actually made more money in streaming.
Interesting.
But I think because there's this window where, so the way the movies went, while I was reading up on this prior to this one, what I saw was the movie studios, they have a partnership with the cinemas, right? So when
Exclusivity.
yeah, exactly. So there's a window of exclusivity, which historically has been about 3 months, let's say, 75 days to 90 days. That window has come down quite a bit because of streaming, because they make a lot of money streaming, and so people have these two alternative options of consuming movies and cinema. But really, that window where it's just predominantly movies, that remains unchanged, and I don't think that changes.
It's not as long anymore, I think.
Yes, but the question of our cinemas going away, I think for me, definitely there's no way.
For sure not. I think there's several things. One, for the actors, everybody wants to do big screen movie. If you say
That's a good
Netflix,
point.
we just want to do Netflix. The
Yes.
talent, the directors, the cast, they want to do movies because they want to see themselves on big screen. It's
Yes.
Is the top of the top is cinemas. I think two, the economic incentive is there to do a big screen movie. You can't have an Avenger movie just on streaming.
Exactly.
You cannot make the same amount of money. You can make, I think, maybe 50 million in streaming only. The 1 billion plus box offices that you have for the top movies, you can't do that on streaming. So I think the big movies will always want to do that, and I think there's also lots of streaming titles that it's streaming only that failed. And I think even now, if you look at the big streaming providers, I think it's only Netflix that doesn't want to do big screen. You look at Apple TV, you look at Amazon, both of them committed of doing movies for big screen. I think the business model going forward is you release on big screen.
Yeah. And
to your point, you reduce potentially the exclusivity window.
Yeah.
And then you go on your streaming platform.
Yeah.
Because it's not viable to have a huge budget for your streaming only title. But I believe that Netflix is the odd one out that still wants to disrupt the market.
Yes.
And that doesn't do it. But Amazon and Apple both have announced big budgets. Yeah. Especially Amazon to go big screen. So I agree with you, but I think the last word is not spoken yet. Where this is going to shake out.
What do you think about like your personal experience of cinemas? So what do you think? Like, what for you is the difference between watching a movie on Netflix on your couch versus a cinema experience?
Yeah, the cinema is different, right? The watching the movie on the couch is very nice, very fun.
Yeah.
But you do it in your home, you don't feel like it's an experience.
Yeah.
Whereas the cinema is, you go out of the house, you potentially buy some popcorn, maybe you go for lunch or dinner before or after, and then you watch that movie. So it's a whole, like it's that's your evening plan or your afternoon plan. So it's an activity, right? And you go out of the house and do that. Whereas at home watching the movie, it's more like you're a couch potato. So, me personally, it's really rare that I watch an actual movie at home.
Yeah.
Because I really enjoy the cinema experience more, but that's me personally.
I fully agree with you. I mean, for me, the cinema experience is such a nice. It's almost like a bit of a romantic experience, right?
Yeah.
It's a romanticism associated
Yeah.
with cinemas, and kind of a weird thing. But whenever I go to a new city, I do tend to check out the cinemas
Is it?
of that movie, because the cinemas of different cities, they've got a different vibe. Like a place like London, you've got too many commercial cinemas, right? Like, but there are a lot of independent movie cinemas in smaller cities, and they have such an interesting vibe. And so, yeah, for me, like the whole cinema experience just remains a bit sacrosanct. I don't know. Growing up between 20 and let's say like until I was 30, I saw a movie. Well, till the pandemic, I saw a movie a week
Yeah.
in the cinema.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I mean, so for me, the movie experience is amazing.
Yeah.
It's there are certain cons to it. I think the cinemas, they put too many costs, on like the whole thing together can cost too much money, which is one factor.
That's a downside. Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
but I think for the same reason why concerts and football matches are not going away is the same reason why cinemas are not going away.
Yeah.
That it's just
It's an experience.
a bunch of people watching it together,
Yeah.
all hanging, like sensing the tension. You can all feel it. It's palpable in that environment, on a big screen. So I think, yeah, there's something about the cinema that's just not replaceable.
And the interesting thing is, if you look at which cinemas are doing well, it's more the ones like Everyman, or like this type of cinemas where you have like you can have a drink at your seat, food there. Maybe you can fancy chairs. You can go back and you can put your legs on a little stool or something. And these type of cinemas, or like I'm a member in something which is called Rooftop Cinema Club.
Yes.
Where you sit on the rooftop. It's open air and you put headphones, and that's how you listen to the music and stuff. So these type of things, I believe, are doing better than the traditional, cinema where you buy a popcorn, sit in a chair, and watch the movie.
Yeah.
Because the experience is quite enjoyable, I find.
Yes.
And then if you have great movies, even better.
Exactly. And so I mean, hopefully this will be the beginning of a new and amazing movie similar to these ones. I think this is such an inspirational director, right? So I think maybe this will spur some new projects, and hopefully we'll have some amazing content and movies coming out in the coming months and years. Anything else? Or should we wrap it up?
So big shout out to Michelle and Nasim, who commented of our last week's video. Keep it going, like, share, subscribe, comment.
Exactly. And actually, if you have any constructive feedback, also feel free to comment. We are very receptive to it.
And then, so next week is gonna be what, Barbie? Or
probably not. But, we'll think of it. Maybe, why not? But okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Julian.
Thank you.
And for hosting us.
And see you next week.
Thank you.